And we're back here with the Left Foot on 92.1 WPTS News. My name is Chaz Aiden. I'm here with Andrew Sabo. And Andrew, I think we were looking at discussing the upcoming midterm elections. I know this is going to be obviously a hot topic in the days and months ahead. Certainly here on WPTS News, we're going to be having a lot of discussion of that coming up. They're projecting Democrats to lose a lot of seats. What do you think about that?
Let's look at the national picture just briefly here first. Okay, so we have heard a ton of things that everyone seems to say the Republicans are going to do well. Of course, they're going to gain some seats. My question is, are they really going to be able to take the House or the Senate? Now, this is my opinion. I think the Senate's going to stay blue. I've seen projections where, I think roughly it'll be 52 Democrats, 47 Republicans, obviously give or take a few. But I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think you hear a lot more talk about Democrats losing the House. But I think that's because they hold 256 seats, and if the Republicans gain 40 seats, they can take control. And you're not going to ask anyone to name the 40 districts that they think that they're going to flip. It's just not doable. So it's very feasible to say, oh yeah, I guess in the scheme of things,
right,
you could flip 40 seats. Whereas the Senate, you get a lot less talk about that because
there's basically 18 seats in play.
You need to flip 10.
Yeah.
10 is a number that people don't deal with. You have fingers for that. You can name 10 states that will flip. And you really... They aren't there. I mean, essentially, what you'd have to do is, if you take projections, I mean, it's widely accepted that Democrats are going to lose certain seats. So Democrats would have to lose... they'd have to lose seats that they hold in Delaware, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Arkansas, Wisconsin, Nevada, North Dakota, California, and Washington. They'd have to lose all but one of those. And right now, if you look at 538.com, if you look at Nate Silver, who I like a lot, he puts the Democrats at an average of 52. He has a slight favorite in Illinois before toss-up. He's got them at a 53.1% chance of winning. And he's got, leaning Democratic races in California, Washington, and Wisconsin. But the thing is, in addition to that, you'd have to also... The Republicans would have to defend seats that they have a shot at losing in places like New Hampshire and Ohio and Kentucky and Missouri. They'd have to run the table.
Exactly. I mean, there are... Let's look in the House first. Of the basically 104 seats in play, the other ones we know which way they're going.
Right.
There's 55 leaning Democratic seats, and then there's 31 toss-ups. Even if the Republicans win all of those toss-ups, but the Democrats can hang on to the ones they're leading in right now, the Democrats will still have control. So, I mean, there is some hope out there.
And, I've said this before, and I'll say it again, because I really believe it's true. I think it actually might not be a bad thing for the Democratic Party if they lose a few seats. If they hold on to a majority but lose a few seats. Because right now, with a 59-member caucus, you say, oh, well, we're only one vote away from 60. You can have a cloture vote if we just pull one Republican, and we love to be really idealistic about getting one of those Republicans, even though they're all going to vote in a block. And we know that. We're going to be really optimistic about getting one of those votes. If we just do that, then, this. And we put up with a lot of dissent from within our own caucus. And I think if you are down to, say, 53 or 54 seats in the Senate, you're not going to be close to that cloture motion. You're going to say, you know what? If you want to filibuster this bill, you have to filibuster this bill. You have to stand up on the floor and speak, and keep speaking. You have to hold the floor. You have to kind of do the Mr. Smith Goes to Washington thing, where you stand up and you talk for as long as you can. And
well, yeah, that's the thing. Maybe they can actually stick to their principles, stick to the original Democrat principles.
Maybe if you look at a smaller majority, you're not going to put up with as much from the right flank of the party.
Right.
Because also, if you look at the Democrats who are going to lose seats, you have people like Blanche Lincoln who aren't really helping the Democrats out that much. And if you look in the House, a lot of the Democrats who are supposed to lose are really conservative Democrats who won in right-leaning districts in 2006 and 2008. Really difficult districts for Democrats to win in general. Really conservative representatives. In Alabama's 5th. Obviously, the situation is different there because we had Parker Griffith elected as a Democrat in 2008, never voted like a Democrat, did no help to the Democratic Party, save voting for, Democratic leadership. Say what you will about the Democratic leadership, switched to the Republican Party. He ran this year as a Republican. He lost his primary, which, I found delicious. But when you think about it, we might be just losing Democrats who aren't helpful to the Democratic Party, who aren't helpful to these progressive causes that the Democratic Party has always historically stood for.
Well, all right, so switching gears a little bit to a little bit more local races now.
Yes.
You mentioned good Democrats kind of versus bad Democrats.
Right.
We have a race in Toomey versus Sestack where I think you have a clear choice.
Yes.
You really know what you're getting out of these two. You're getting different candidates. This isn't one of the races where two centrist candidates, blah, 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 same old. No. I'm looking at Toomey's record. I won't go through all of it, but, I mean, it's a little scary. Very anti-environment. Yeah, exactly. So, the polls aren't looking great right now. The real quick average has Toomey up.
Projects it at a 45-53 spread on the vote share in favor of Patrick. And good for the Republicans in the 88% chance of winning it. It really is upsetting because we do have a strong progressive Democrat in Joe Sestak, Representative Sestak, and you have a far right candidate like
that's
Pat
the thing.
Toomey.
I understand that the mood in politics right now is fairly anti-democratic, very conservative. Republicans, they're feeling good right now, but you have to look at this. Do you want this for Pennsylvania? Toomey is rated 13% by the AFL-CIO for his anti-labor voting record, 0% from an environmental group, 0% from a pro-choice group. These are extremely low ratings. This is not a moderate Republican.
Right. It's sadly, I mean, a lot of the discussion of the issues is lost with this, but it really does come down to, do you want, protection for your job and for the, the air that you breathe and the water that you drink? Do you want protection for your own health? Or do you want to vote for Patrick? It's really sad. It gets lost in this whole, anti-democratic, anti-government wave, and we really lose things that people hold very, very dear. These basic protections. I mean, just remember, what is the, Republicans often win in rural districts, but who are the people who brought, rural electricity.
You can do this
to the rural areas of this country. Who are the people who protect the water that we drink and the air that we breathe? Who are the people who have expanded literacy?
The Tea Partiers?
I believe they're the Democratic Party.
Okay.
You talk about his 13% lifetime rating from the AFL-CIO. Who are the people who brought you the weekend labor unions? Do you want someone who hates? Trust me, I'm from New Jersey. We have a governor who fundamentally seems to disagree with a worker's right to organize. It's terrible. You don't want that, for your state and for the country.
Sure. Chaz, Bob, before we're done today, speaking of organizing, maybe you heard about Glenn Beck. He organized a little something.
Yes, he did. It's so ridiculous.
So Glenn Beck had this big rally. Any thoughts quickly from you on Glenn Beck in general? You like him, right? You're a fan.
I was having a discussion with someone about this earlier. He seems to be very, very evil most of the time, but sometimes he's also just very, very stupid.
Here's what I was surprised about with this rally. I figured obviously you're going to have a ton of anti-government stuff, a ton of, what the normal, but what I was surprised in was that how much of a emphasis on faith this guy puts in.
Yes.
Literally up there preaching about God and in explicit terms, turn to God. Like, this is beyond now anti-government or even a political discussion. This is turning into, let's use fear, let's use like old school religion and talk about God, and it's kind of frightening.
Right. I was talking to a friend of ours, Ben Robinson, the other day. He's a good guy. He sent me an article. I think it was maybe a brother or a friend of his wrote, comparing it to, the various Great Awakenings.
Mm-hmm.
Fire and brimstone preachers to,
right.
just, and what I found particularly outrageous about this was, it was designed to be the anniversary of Martin Luther King Jr.'s March on Washington.
Same spot, two
Right, same
flights
spot.
down,
Right.
respectively. Two flights down, very appropriate.
Right. And, he's been trying to co-opt the ideas of the civil rights movement, which I think is ridiculous for the right wing to do. So I saw online today, I think it was from a link off of the Center for American Progress, when they sent out their progress report today. They sent out first of all, the original March on Washington that they're trying to co-opt was called the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. And these were their 10 demands. They demanded comprehensive and effective civil rights legislation from the present Congress without compromise or filibuster, seeking to guarantee access to all public accommodations, decent housing, adequate and integrated education, and the right to vote. They demanded the withholding of federal funds from all programs in which discrimination exists, the desegregation of all school districts in 1963, enforcement of the 14th Amendment, reducing congressional representation of states where citizens are disenfranchised, an executive order banning discrimination in all housing supported by federal funds, authority for the Attorney General to institute injunctive suits when any constitutional right is violated, and here's where it gets really good, a massive federal program to train and place all unemployed workers, regardless of race, on meaningful and dignified jobs at decent wages, a national minimum wage act. On what that would be in today's dollars. They asked for a broadened Fair Labor Standards Act to include all areas of employment, and a federal Fair Employment Practices Act barring discrimination by federal, state, municipal governments, and by employers, contractors, employment agencies, and trade unions. That is not what this rally stood for.
Not quite. Well, here's the thing, though. I'm not willing to throw all the Tea Party supporters under the bus and say they're just a bunch of far-right crazies. Look, but here's a poll from a couple months ago. They were asked, these are Tea Party supporters, what don't you like about President Obama? A simple, straightforward question. Right. The top answer, offered by 19%, was that they don't like him. That was the top answer. I mean, honestly, we're in a country where 1 in 5 people, 20% of the population, thinks President Obama is a Muslim still.
Right.
How do you have faith in the American people right now? It's tough.
It is very difficult, and we're just about out of time here. So I'm